Hi everyone, Cassie here with a commander video for you all. Playing some gay dads, Kynaios and Tiro of Melitus, who are, canonically a gay couple, and it's awesome. And I love the effect that they have, so we're gonna jam some awesome stuff. The great thing, the fun thing about Kynaios and Tiro is that their effect looks it looks a little bit symmetrical at first glance, but it isn't quite. So basically, the text says, at the beginning of your end step, draw a card. Each player may put a land card from his or her hand onto the battlefield. Then each opponent who didn't draws a card. What this means is that at the beginning of your end step, you get to draw a card, and then you have the option to put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. Your opponents have the option to put a land from their hand onto the battlefield. If they do not get to draw a card. If they don't, they get to draw a card. So you get to draw a card and get a free land drop. Your opponents get their choice of either of the two. So it's not symmetrical, and as 2/8, Kynaios and Tiro are excellent blockers. So they basically sit around giving us mana and cards and gumming up the battlefield until we can draw into our bombs. Alright. So the rest of the deck is mana. Burge, Noble, Hierarch, the best 1 mana accelerants in the format. I'm not playing any artifacts that ramp any of the Soul Ring, Mana Vault, Mana Crypt type things. And that's partially a nod to the new ban list. I want you to see what a deck would look like without the ban list, or with the ban list in place. But it's also in large part because Kynaios and Tiro just don't want those cards. We want to get our commander out as soon as possible, and the problem with those cards is that they only make colored mana. So they can't cast our commander, which is 4 different colored mana symbols. Thought Vessel is just a nod to the fact that over the course of the game, we'll be drawing a tremendous number of cards, especially because we have some pretty big spells. We have we have the ability to play both lands and creatures off the top of our library, which keeps cards in our hand. We have Kefnet and Rhystic Study and Consecrated Sphinx and Sphinx's Revelation and things like that. So it's definitely worth playing a Singleton Thought Vessel to go along with the Reliquary Tower in the mana base. Just right here. Thought Vessel does not produce colored mana, but it's not necessarily something that's going to come down on turn 2. We're probably going to play it as in mid game, and it'll cost effectively 1 colorless, and it will keep us from having to discard, and it'll ramp us on future turns. This deck is extraordinarily mana hungry, so playing some ramp in the mid game is not that bad, and even in the late game, it doesn't really affect us because we want as much mana as possible. We have all these really, really big cards that we need mana for, we need lands for, and that's the kind of game that our commander is trying to play too. So you'll notice fully a 7th of the deck is just dedicated to ramp, in addition to all of our lands. This means that we're really likely to have a ramp spell and a few lands in our opening hand. And some of the ramp cards do other things too, like generate card advantage or ramp an exorbitant amount. Or in the case of Vorinclex, they tax the opponent's mana as well. But overall, we have 58 sources of mana, and that might even be a little too few. Moving up the curve, just Sakura Tribe Elder, Farseek, and Bloomtender all just, smooth our mana. Bloomtender doesn't necessarily fix our mana that much, but it helps with the double green, the double white, the double blue, which we have to deal with, and then, double red for Omnath Locus of Rage once. But it can also make more than 1 mana. With our commander out, it taps to make 4 mana. And that is absurd. Excuse me. Also, we have a lot of dual lands in the deck. So if we use a tropical and something else to cast Bloom Tender, the next turn the tropical can tap for blue instead of green, and Bloom Tender can tap for the green mana that we need. Kodama's Reach and Cultivator are especially good with our commander because they give us a land in hand for the end of turn trigger. Not much else to be said about that. Wood Elves is solid because it's a creature, it can chump, it can be brought back with something like a Karmic Guide or a Revelark if we need to, and it gets the land untapped. Coalition Relic obviously can make 2 mana, can make like an extra mana whenever we need it to at the cost of not producing mana this turn, which is very useful. It's a great option to have. It's one of the weaker ramp cards. Coalition Relic and Wood Elves kind of drop off a little bit in quality. With Coalition Relic, it's just that we have this where is it? This Bane of Progress in our deck, and this Austere Command, and Coalition Relic can kind of sometimes get hit as collateral damage from those. But it's still a great card. It still lets us do absurd things sometimes, like big jumps in mana. Oracle of Moldiah is also really great with this deck because it lets us play lands off the top of our library, which means that if we draw lands normally, we can save those for the end of turn trigger with Kynaios and Tiro. So that's really useful, as well as just its normal card advantage. Also, when you get Oracle running in tandem with Vizier of the Menagerie, which lets you play creatures from the top, you can kind of churn through the deck. Solemn Simulacrum is just, solid commander staple. Gets value when it comes into play, and when it dies, it's a 2/2 body. I'm never sad to have it destroyed with Austere Commander Bane of Progress. Mirari's Wake pumps our creatures and gives us, extra mana. And then Vorinclex gives us extra mana, taxes our opponents, and is just a 7/6 trampler. So this is all our ramp spells. We have some removal, swords, obviously, Beast Within. We don't have a Path to Exile because the whole point of Kynaios and Tiro is that we hit land drops all the time. We hit extra land drops all the time, and our opponent hits extra land drops only some of the time, so Path kind of undoes that a little bit. Cards like Hull Breach and Decimate, combined with Austere Command and Bane of Progress, are great ways to get rid of multiple artifacts and or enchantments at the same time if there are multiple problem permanents on the table. Detention Sphere and Reclamation Sage are just kind of catch-all answers, as is Woodfall Primus even more. And then we have some of the Wraths. We have like Angel of Serenity and Dragon Lord Atarka, which provide bodies and ways to destroy things. Angel of Serenity can also help us loop cards from our graveyard. So if Angel of Serenity gets back something like an Eternal Witness or a Karmic Guide or a Green Warden of Marasa, our opponent will have to work pretty hard to break up that chain. They'll have to exile something or make us discard something from our hand, things like that. And then we have, Austere Command also functions as a Wrath. We have Martial Coup, Cyclonic Rift, and then Elspeth Sun's Champion, which is, we mostly use her for her minus, and then her staying on the table threatens to uptick. But we can also uptick her to ultimate, and that's a really good way to threaten to win the game in a deck that can sometimes be a little anemic on ways to actually end the game after getting a bunch of card advantage. It doesn't look like it, but there's so much interaction in Commander, especially board wipes, and we're playing some board wipes of our own, that the games can get really grindy, and often we draw a little too much of the mana half of our deck, and not quite enough of the closing half of our deck. And that's fine, that's the way the deck is kind of designed to be, because more mana is never bad, but having Elspeth have this functionality of making an emblem that gives all of our creatures evasion and makes it bigger is just fantastic. It's a great option to have, even if we don't always use it. We have Sylvan Library, which should be in this pile. It's just a great card. Draws us cards, filters our draws, things like that. Lets us turn all this 40 life that we have into something that does a bit more. Mystical Tutor, Worldly Tutor, Green Sun Zenith, and Bring to Light are all just ways to have some tutoring capability to improve the consistency of our deck, find the specific answer we need at the specific time. Pretty solid. Then we have a bunch of bombs. Eternal Witness and Green Warden of Marasa kind of return cards to our hand so we can reuse our really powerful effects. Yavimaya Elder and Courser of Krufix. And Nissa Vestwood's here, make sure we hit lands. Nissa swaps into a Planeswalker, so she becomes a threat. And then we have, like, Vizier helps us hit creatures. And then we have, like, all of our top end. Karmic Guide and Revelark are also some recursion are also part of the recursion engine. And then we just have a lot of big stuff. Rhystic Study draws us cards. Kefnet draws us cards eventually, while and its downside of returning a land isn't too bad. It actually gives us more money or more mana. More mana because we can replay the land with Kynaios and Tiro if we don't have another one. And it helps us turn on Kefnet. And Kefnet block is just a great blocker. 5/5 flying indestructible. Not many things get past that. You need to be really big and have trample. Or have some other kind of evasion like Shadow. And then Consecrated Sphinx draws us cards. Tireless Tracker draws us cards. Sun Titan is recursion. Maelstrom Wanderer draws us cards and gives us a bunch of mana advantage. And creatures we control have haste is huge with, like, Avenger of Zendikar and Omnath and Rampaging Baloths. And these three have, like, these three are landfall cards. Because Kynaios and Tiro are so good at helping us hit extra land drops. So a few landfall cards is, just makes the deck absolutely amazing. And these cards are just absurd when we have Kynaios out, when we have Oracle of Moldiah out. They're turbocharged by the rest of the deck. I didn't want to go too far in on this theme, but some fatties that help us with that, not a miss. Hornet Queen is kind of a pseudo Wrath. It's just a great defensive card, and all the flying power can pressure Planeswalkers if we need to. And then Sphinx's Revelation is just Sphinx's Revelation. We're ramping. We're making a bunch of land drops. We're just crushing it. We're just, crushing the mana game. So who doesn't like draw? I cast Sphinx's Revelation for 22 in a game last night. I lost that game, but I cast Sphinx's Revelation for 22. So that's an achievement in and of itself. Already mentioned Sylvan Library. Clever Impersonators, just a catch-all. Like, any permanent, if our opponent has something better than ours, we'll steal it, but it can also copy any of these landfall creatures, any of our value creatures, things like that. Eledra Archmage is the only counterspell in the deck, and there's good reason that it's in there. It withstands wraths, it counters non-creature spells, which are the spells we're the most scared about, and then Lightning Grooves is just a good catch-all. So the only thing we have left to talk about is the lands, and there's not a whole lot to talk about there, but there are a couple of important things to mention. First of all, we have, like, all the fetches and all the shocks, so that's pretty great. And all the original duels as well. Corrosive Verge kind of counts as a fetch, and it's pretty great because it's also kind of a ramp spell. It's excellent with our landfall triggers, but the deck really benefits from all of these shuffle effects, specifically because of Oracle of Moldiah, Vizier of the Menagerie, Courser of Krufix, things like that. Alright, so that's 19 because we have the Corrosive Verge, right? The other 18 are just 6, 6, and 6. Don't have any off-color fetches. Seemed a little excessive. Then we have these. We have some basics, like 9 of them, I think. And that's because we have several cards that grab basics, but we don't have room for a ton of basics. I haven't found it to be too few yet, but I've only played a couple games with the deck, so we'll see. That's what I'm going to look to change. Going to look to possibly add a few basics. We have all of these All of these clan and shard and wedge tri-lands, which are great. They come into play tapped, but they provide all of our colors but one, and it's really convenient. They do some heavy lifting. As far as like rainbow lands go, we also have Command Tower and Reflecting Pool. And then Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds create 2 landfall triggers each, and they can find any basic, which is nice. Not nearly as good as any of the other fetches, but what can you do? And then the other special lands we have are Reliquary Tower, which is a necessity if we're drawing a ton of cards, which we are, and Temple of the False God, which doesn't come down early enough to help us cast our commander anyway, so I'm not worried about the fact that it only produces colorless. Same with Reliquary Tower. Like, we don't want to play this on before turn 5 anyway. So, like, these 2 cards are the only lands that produce colorless mana in the deck, or have to. And they have some pretty important other effects when we have so many bombs. What Temple of the False God does is it helps with Kynaios and Tiro. It helps us hit 7 mana on turn 5. Kynaios and Tiro gives us our 5th land at the end of the turn. Then we untap, play Temple of the False God, which is +2, and we have 7. And 7's a pretty important number. So that's very useful. And then here, the only other unique lands I want to talk about are these guild lands, the bounce lands, if you will. And I'm playing all 6 of them in our colors because of Kynaios and Tiro, and because of Oracle of Moldiah, which is right here. So the nice thing about Kynaios and Tiro is that it gives us extra land drops, but we can't fully use its ability if we don't have lands to play. Otherwise, we're basically getting the same effect as our opponents, and that's not good. So the bounce land solved the problem by helping us ramp if we have extra land, ramp even more if we have extra land drops, and they just help give us all the land drops. So they're really good. I really like playing all 6. I would not recommend trying to find more because it's just not worth it. There are a few, and by more I mean a few other like little, like there are the layers or whatever. I would not recommend using any of those. These 6 they fix our mana, and they're kind of the best value out of any of those lands throughout Magic's history. All right, that is the deck. And you should stay tuned for the match, the game. It's probably gonna be a great one.